Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the changes that are going on in college football and how a lot of them are necessary, a lot of them are going to get us to a place that we all hope to get to, but it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road to get there. But let's start to break down this Hall of Fame class in 2025. We have a ton of new faces that are up for Hall of Fame status this upcoming year, and there are a lot of really, really good ones. So let's start to break this down because it is going to be a fascinating class. Let's start with Kenyon Barner. I think a lot of you likely remember him from his Oregon days. He was actually one of the first jerseys I've ever owned as a college football fan. So definitely has a special place in my heart. Someone that I love a lot. Was an absolute burner when he was at Oregon. So a huge player. I'll be totally honest, I did not see all of these players play, to be totally fair, so I can't necessarily speak on them as much as I would like, but I did as much research as I could to get a good idea of who all these guys are. I mean, Aaron Donald speaks for itself. One of the best defensive players of all time. Frankly, the best that I've ever seen. He did incredible things at the NFL, but it started at Pitt, where he was just an absolute force for those 4 years. He was at Pitt and just an absolute dominant player. And Alex Faneka is another remarkable player from LSU, was an All-American while he was there, was a huge piece for that LSU program while he was on that campus. John Henderson, one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the entire SEC history, someone that absolutely was a huge part of those Tennessee days that a lot of Tennessee fans remember and want to go back to as quickly as possible and feel like they might just be going back to right now. You also have Mark Ingram, the very first Heisman winner for Alabama. That's a huge thing. And when you talk about Alabama, you're talking about college football. So I think he's going to be someone that might be a little bit hard to keep out. Deshaun Jackson right there coming from Cal. Obviously, I remember him a little bit more from his NFL career, but the dude was electric from pretty much day one. So he's definitely an absolute beast. Alex Mack had a fantastic NFL career, but also was incredible for Cal right around that same time when him and Deshaun were teammates. Tons of really, really good names on here. Sean Taylor, RIP, one of the best, hardest hitting safeties that you have ever seen. Guy just flew downhill, and someone that definitely will find his way into the Hall of Fame at some point, whether it's this year or down the road. Steve Slayton is someone that you might not remember too well, but was a huge, huge piece of that West Virginia '07 run that was one of the best non-national champions we've seen in quite some time. And this guy was a huge piece of that, was an absolute beast. And then Manti Te'o, one of the most remarkable defensive players I've seen in my lifetime, was a Heisman finalist, did some just ridiculous things while at Notre Dame. Just an absolute incredible player. And then the last two guys on that list, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, the two guys that likely define this list more than anyone else. Nick Saban, we knew was going to be here. Urban Meyer, I think they were likely just waiting to make sure that he was not getting back into coaching because that was still a little bit up in the air from time to time throughout the last couple of years. But I think he's set over there at Fox. I think he's plenty happy, and I think he's probably out of college football for good going forward. But obviously, this is a remarkable group. Sean Taylor, Manti Te'o, Aaron Donald, Mark Ingram, and all of the other players on this list are absolutely elite. I'll be totally honest, I don't know how anyone makes Hall of Fame decisions because when you look at all of these guys' stats, it's just absurd what they were able to accomplish when they were in college football, and it's going to be interesting to see who makes this list. I'll give 5 picks of my own later on, but spoiler alert, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban are going to get in. There's no two ways about that. Nick Saban being the best coach that college football has ever seen. 7 national titles. He went 292, 71, and 1 over 28 seasons. So an absolute dominating force. I think we all understand that he was going to be in the Hall of Fame as quickly as possible. Frankly, they could have inducted him while he was still a head coach, but that's just the reality of this situation. And then Urban Meyer, third highest winning percentage of all time, won 219 games, 3 national titles, so yeah, he's going to be there as well. There's no two ways about that. So 2 of the best coaches that I've ever seen, absolutely, but 2 of the best coaches the sport has ever seen, and they will be making their way into the Hall of Fame. There's no two ways about that. But I have a problem with this list, and I think it's the problem that pretty much everyone else in college football has, and I'm sure some of you might have while looking at this list. There's no Mike Leach on here. And that's absolutely insane. There's no two ways about that. I don't understand how it's taken remotely this long to get him on that list and get him in the Hall of Fame. He is one of the pioneers of the new way that we play this sport. He was one of the guys that took what Hal Mumme started way back in the day and made it mainstream. Those Texas Tech teams were as defining to college football as many other teams in history. He totally changed the dynamic of you're going to pass the ball, and you're going to continue to pass the ball, and you're going to pass the ball some more, and it's going to be really, really incredible. So it's one of those things where Mike Leach was an absolute staple of this sport, and he's someone that he defined the way that we play, he defined the way that college football is coached, and he's also one of the best personalities we've ever seen in this sport. And the fact that he's not even up for conversation in the Hall of Fame is beyond stupid. So hopefully they figure that out. Hopefully fans make a big enough fuss that he gets in there. But man, that is a huge omission, and there's really no other way to argue that he shouldn't be in there. But let's get to the guys that are actually on this list. Let's get to the 5 picks that I have that I think will make the Hall of Fame in their first year. And it starts with a guy that I think we all understand. Aaron Donald was an absolute force at Pitt, did some really remarkable things, was an All-American selection, won ACC Defensive Player of the Year as a senior, did some just incredible things. And frankly, although it is the College Football Hall of Fame, I don't think it hurts at all that he had the NFL career that he had. So I think this is a slam dunk. I think he's absolutely going to be in, and someone that likely should be in for the way that he was just an absolute dominant force when he was at Pitt. Then you got John Henderson, a guy that, frankly, I didn't get the pleasure of watching live, but everything that I've seen has just been absolutely remarkable. Was a 2-time All-SEC recipient, 162 total tackles, 20 and a half sacks at defensive tackle throughout a career is absolutely insane. Frankly, he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, played 10 seasons in the NFL, 2-time Pro Bowler, did just incredible things on the football field, but it all started at Tennessee, and he was a force, someone that absolutely is one of the best defensive tackles in SEC history, Tennessee history, and college football history, frankly. So definitely should be making the list this time around. Mark Ingram, we talked about it earlier. When you are the first Heisman winner for a program like Alabama, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. He did just remarkable things while there, won a national title, obviously, in 2009, the year that he won that Heisman, did some really remarkable things, ran for over 1,600 yards, scored 20 touchdowns that year, was a unanimous All-American in 2009, and went on to be a 3-time 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL. So he was no slouch at the next level either. Definitely a guy that absolutely should be on this list because he was kind of one of the pioneers of the Nick Saban era at Alabama, and it's one of the most defining eras of college football history. So Mark Ingram, I fully expect to be in this list. And then Sean Taylor, one of the best pure football players that has probably ever played the sport. Left us far too soon and definitely would have been probably much, much higher on a lot of lists that he really should be on. One of the most remarkable players that a lot of us have ever seen, was a unanimous first-team All-American in 2003, was a finalist for the Thorpe Award, did just incredible things, and is one of those guys that if you want to convince someone to love football, you turn on his highlight tape and just show him just tearing into people, and it just makes it for really, really fun TV, and definitely a guy that I think all of us look back on very, very fondly. So someone that I really, really hope makes it, someone that definitely defined a era of college football down in Coral Gables that will live on for an eternity, and he is a huge piece of that. And then Alan Faneca is a fantastic offensive guard from LSU. Did not play during my lifetime, unfortunately, but definitely was a remarkable player for LSU. Had a first-team All-Pro when he was in the NFL. When he was at LSU, he was an All-American in 97. Did some really, really remarkable things. Won the SEC blocking trophy, All-Conference 2 years in a row. So just did remarkable things at LSU. And definitely when you're one of the best players at a program like LSU, you're going to find your way into the Hall of Fame. So it's a lot of really good names on this list. There's no two ways about that. I think it's going to be incredibly hard to break down this list and figure out who you want to let in. Obviously, there's no necessarily cap on who you want to let in. If I was voting, I'd probably give a vote to Kenyon Barner just because I love him that much back in the day. But there's also Ken Dorsey still out there. Garrison Hurst hasn't made it in, which is out of this world insane, but there's still some really remarkable players that still need to find their way in. So although this is a remarkable first year class, they might have to wait a little bit for some of the guys that probably should have been in earlier to find their way in. But we're going to take our second break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about my all-transfer team. It was a remarkable year for the transfer portal, and I want to break down my offense for this year. I think there's a ton of guys to choose from, but I feel like I got a pretty good team on my hands. So we'll break that down right after this, so stick with us.